Alright, so this is the coding walkthrough video for Starbeast 1.6. Now, as you can probably see, we've changed the game a lot since 1.5. Mainly because it's the week beforehand in, so there's been a lot of changes. This video will probably be quite long, as we've got quite a lot to get through. So, as usual, I'm just going to hit play and show you what's different, which is pretty much everything, and then how it was coded. Oh, we've got gizmos. Off you go. So as you can see already, it's different. So Leo now starts off in his proper spawning place according to the story for the game, which has now been written by my fellow teammates. Basically, it starts off in this little shrine here, and then almost immediately he is greeted by this NPC here. Now as you get close to him, into his on-trigger sphere collider, this little exclamation mark appears above his head, and then you can enter and begin my dialogue system. So this is one of the few things in this game that has not been influenced by tutorials or help from my peers. The dialogue system is something I pretty much entirely constructed on my own, which is part of the reason why it's not the best. But yeah, so as you can see, we've got a bit of the story here, and then hit enter. Right. One slight thing there. Let me just grab it. So yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is that the game is now fully controller compatible. So much so, in that it pretty much no longer works on keyboard and mouse now, or at least not very well. It's much, much better on controller. So I've just plugged in my controller, and Unity's decided to freeze. Yeah, there we go, joystick connected, it's registered it. But yeah, so we'll go up to this NPC here, exclamation mark, there we go. So you press the B button on controller, and it goes through all the different dialogue until you get to the end there. Then you can go out of his on-trigger sphere collider, off we go. So that's the dialogue system, or at least in basic form. So what we've also got is new movement for controller, because as I say, the controller system has now been fully implemented, and as a result movement's been changed to kind of work better for it. But unfortunately, to the detriment of working on PC. It works far better on controller, less on PC now, is essentially the thing. So if you move forward, what you can now do, if we just get out of this shrine, is the camera, as you can see, the camera now turns the player. Now previously the camera just turned like that and was independent completely of the player, whereas now if you're moving, the camera can turn the player too, and if you want to just look around you stop moving, and the camera can pan around and do its usual stuff. And of course you can now turn backwards. Ooh. And it's, yeah, what this essentially does is makes the camera and the movements much more connected than they previously were, because they were quite separate before. But now that we had a bit of a playtest on Monday, and my teammates reckoned that in order for it to work much better with controller, what are we hitting here? In order for it to work much better with controller, it needed to be more like a third-person camera from a controller-based game, essentially. So with a little help from my teammates, this was coded in, and yeah, it is one of the few things in this game that feels really nice and refined. So far, anyway. Yeah, so we go up down here, and the orbit systems have been moved about. So as you can see, we've got another orbit pillar here now. So what we'll do is we'll look over here and lock on. Try to lock on. Where is it? Come on, I know you're there. Alright, let's do this the easy way. Go over to the pillar over here. Yeah, one thing we've also done is added this, well, we've literally just changed the tags of this shrine here to allow you to essentially transport right to it, because it's a key part of the story. So we run in here, head down these stairs, and I'll get to that in a minute, and then head up to this NPC here, whose exclamation mark doesn't work. I'll fix that in the next update, I think. It's one of the many bugs this massive revamp of the game has produced, essentially. So press B, we've got a bit more dialogue through that. and then he points you to the Ares Shrine, which is that way. But as you can see, pressing the trigger buttons here doesn't do anything. That's because Leo's weapon system has been disabled, because this was the tutorial part of the story essentially up until now. But now the tutorial's been completed, you can go over to here, pick up the sphere, and your weapons are now in. Oh, blimey. So yeah, using these weapons, you can now head over this way, transport over to this, again, differently placed orbital platform. And go and meet some new friends. So this part of the map is something we haven't really gone over at all yet, because my teammate George has been building that, and it's not really had anything that I've needed to do coding-wise yet. But that's about to change. So as you can see, we now have 2 roaming AI guarding the area. One is there. Ooh, there's the other one. And as you can also see, they no longer have health bars. Oh, God, get back away. Let's fight him. Oh, they're a bit buggy, but you know, they get the job done. Let's head over to this one and fight him. Yeah, because there used to be a health bar right in the... just pretend that didn't happen. There used to be a health bar right in the center of the screen. There now isn't, because it's been disabled here on the HUD. Because that health bar is going to be saved for the boss battle at the end of the game. Now that will be implemented in Starbeast 1.7. Yeah, as you can see here, it's been temporarily disabled until that time, essentially. Alright, so bugs aside, I'm now going to show you how it was all coded. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the new movement system. So it's pretty simple, or at least it was when we coded it. Basically, it takes the direction of the camera, where it's moving on the X position and Z positions here, and then this is a part of the previous code that we found. Basically goes, if you're moving the X axis of the joystick essentially for the controller, if you're moving it, if it's greater than 0F, which means if you're moving it at all, then move the player to compensate by using vectors essentially. So what this part of the code essentially means, I think anyway, is that when you move the player, when you rotate the camera, it essentially rotates the player. That's what that bit does. And a similar part here. And yeah, that's essentially what it does. Is when you move the camera, when you pan the camera around, if the player is moving, as you can see here, if you are moving the player, then rotate the player according to the angle of the camera. That's essentially what that code does. So then, ooh, I forgot to mention this bit when it loads. I'm not going to head all the way back there now, but when you battle an AI, you obviously lost health, as the combat system used to do, but now when you lose health, it regenerates and comes back slowly over time. So as you can see, that little health bar down there is at maximum now, but if you took damage, it would slowly regenerate back up over time. So that was done mainly for gameplay purposes, because if you fought the AIs and you had like 25% health left over, you don't want to have to restart the entire game just because you've lost a bunch of health. So it's not, you don't regenerate so fast that you become unstoppable, but it is fast enough that it makes both combat and the game a little bit more interesting. That was pretty easy to do, to be honest. What we've got here is just a little fixed update that basically goes, if current health is less than 100, less than full essentially, then for each frame, increase health by 0.1F. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but every frame in the 60 frames a second, at least hopefully there is in the game, for each frame you'll get quite a lot of health regenerated. And then obviously it takes the slider value and makes it the current health, so that you can physically see the health regenerating essentially. So now onto the big Monty of this update, the implementation of the dialogue system. So it's pretty simple code, but that makes it quite a complex thing altogether, really. So the first thing we did is set up dialogue here, which is the first NPC's dialogue. Nope, that's the UI. yeah, the first NPC's dialogue here. And what we've essentially done is got a back for it, which is just literally a black box. And the text, which is the white part of it. So if we go... I mean, it should be coming up here, to be honest. If we head over to the HUD... No. If we hit play, then I might be able to show you it. There you go. So the black box there, and the white text there, essentially. So, and then the text has the first line of the story dialogue, essentially, that my team have written. But yeah, so essentially, when the game first starts, this spool here, this boolean, is set to true. And this basically checks when you go into the on-trigger sphere collider of the AI, which is set here. So if we go all the way down here, yeah. So when you enter the on-trigger sphere collider of the first Stargazer, that sets the dialogue system to true, which is that script, and also enables that question mark, or exclamation mark I should say, above its head. And then when you exit, it also disables the script, and disables the exclamation mark. And that's basically all the same for all three of the dialogue systems. So with that in mind, when you enter that on-trigger sphere collider, it sets that boolean to true, and then down here, we've got, if you hit the return key or the B button, and that first boolean that's been set true on start is true, then set the dialogue to be active. So when you first go into the on-trigger sphere collider, there's no speech at all on screen. Then you hit B and it'll begin the speech, essentially. And when it begins that speech, it'll then set this boolean here to true, which goes on to the next one. So if you hit B again, and that boolean that's been set from the first time you press B is true, then it will then change the text again, and set another boolean to true, and it checks it again here, and sets it to true, and changes the text again, and so on until all the text has been done. And that is the same essentially for this one's a bit longer, but it's the same kind of principle for each of these dialogue systems. So you may be wondering, why are they in the wrong order? You know, if this is the first text, second, third, and fourth, why are they in the wrong order? Well, because Unity works in the way that with update it will call these in order. And the problem with it is that if you call this one first, what it will do is make them all true at once, because it will call this one and then set that boolean to true, which will then, and it'll then call this one and set that boolean to true, and it'll do them all at once. Whereas if you do it this way around, then it checks the end one and goes, that's not true, so don't set that to true. That's not true, so don't change the text. That's not true, so don't change the text. That is true, so do change the text. Unity works in a weird way, essentially. And so in order to combat that, you've got to have them the opposite way around. So as you can see, it's a simple system, but in its simplicity, it's very complicated in the way that it's got to be quite long. I'm sure there are easier ways to do the dialogue system, but this was the easiest and best way for me. And it's, yeah, from what I know, what little I know of 3D coding anyway, this was the best way forward, really. And then, so next we go on to a pretty simple script. This is the picking up the player's combat system script. It's pretty easy again. It just takes the player combat script, which enables this melee and range combat, and disables it on startup so they can't use it. And then once the player collides with that sphere that you saw in the shrine, then enable the combat script and destroy the sphere to give the illusion that it's being picked up, essentially. And then finally, what was it called? The slider, the health bar slider for the AI. Because the player has one, if we go in the game, it's got one there. But the AI, as you recall, used to have one in the previous update. So now that there's more roaming AI more than one roaming AI in the game, obviously you can't have that one slider, because you'd have to have multiple sliders for each AI, and considering they're just roaming, they've only got like 10 or 20 health. It doesn't really make much sense to have a health bar on display for them. So that's being reserved for the boss, essentially. And what we've got for that is when the player enters the on-trigger sphere collider of the boss, then enable the slider so it will appear on screen, and then when he exits the on-trigger sphere collider, disable it. So what that essentially means is when the player encounters the boss, which is yet to be implemented, the health bar will display on screen as a boss fight in games would normally do, and then once he gets far enough away from him, the health bar will disappear. Pretty simple stuff. So as you can see then, design-wise, the game has got a lot closer to finish than it was before. Last week, while I was doing various fixes and implementing the new movement and things like that, my team designed a lot of the story and then essentially got me to implement it. So we've got all this dialogue that they've written up. Essentially, Leo gets chucked in here, stripped of all his powers, meets these stargazers, which tell him that he's got to go this way, and uses orbital abilities, which is one of the few abilities he's got left. Go down here to the first orbital pillar there. Now, there's supposed to be, there will be anyway, a tutorial here from these guys, which will tell you, because obviously people playing the game for the first time won't know how to use it. So that guy there will tell you how to use the orbit system. And you head over there, which is a bit fiddly right now. Almost had it there, come on. Come on, there you go. Yes, the idea is you transport all the way into the shrine. Boop. Head down the stairs. Just going to jump for simplicity there. Talk to this guy whose exclamation mark will be fixed, I promise. And then he basically goes, you've got to go fight the boss. And he'll also have a little tutorial in the next update where he'll tell you how to use your weapons, which are here. Then you jump up. Just ignore him for the time being. So, and then you head over to this way. Actually, no, that was wrong. You're supposed to transport, but I forgot. So yeah, you transport over to here, and then head towards the shrine down there, where you encounter those roaming AIs. I'll just head over to there real quick now. If only Leo was a little bit faster. I suppose that's what the orbital platforms are for, really. It's a shame I didn't actually use it then. So yeah, you head into this little area here, and you find a couple of these roaming AI guarding the shrine. There they are. He hasn't seen me, so I think we'll be alright. Him, though, we're going to have to kill. Yeah, so I should probably talk about this. There is a little bug going on with that particular area. Literally, that pink floor over there is problematic at the moment. Not really sure why. That's something I'm going to look into and fix, hopefully, before we have to hand in next week. But yeah, so the essential idea is you go over there, you defeat the roaming AI, you move through it and go to the shrine, fight the boss, who is not implemented yet. That'll be the next update. And then once you've fought the boss, you get teleported back up to that shrine up there, and that NPC that you saw, which doesn't have dialogue yet, you'll then speak to, and he'll go, well done, you've completed the game. Because that's essentially it, really. Yeah, you spawn in, you wander about, you talk to the NPCs, you go fight the boss, get teleported back, do some final dialogue, and finito. So yeah, I do apologise for the length of this video, 20 minutes, blimey. The next one will probably be even longer, because it will probably be the final, if not, the second to last, if not last update for the game before it's handed in. So, yeah, I'll see you for Star Beast 1.7.